Hello, my name is Tony, and I'm going to start this by simply declaring that I love this film. I've been mad about it ever since I first saw the original trailer for it as a forthcoming attraction back at the old Market Hall Cinema around 71 or 72. Movies took their own sweet time reaching provincial theatres in those days. It was probably early 73 when I first caught it on a double bill with Hammer's Dracula Has Risen from the Grave, and I have to say it exceeded my already heightened expectations. It is simply one of the best historical thrillers I've ever seen and probably has ever been. Sure, at the time it was marketed as a horror film to target an audience, but ultimately, even though the events it depicts within its bucolic framework are indeed horrifying, it's much more grounded, much more realistic, multi-layered and textured to fall into that particular generic category. It's more a historical drama thriller, if you will, and quite remarkably, looking back, it appears an eerily prescient piece of work in the context of what is happening in the world today. Fuck's he talking about now, you politely inquire? Well, stick with the programme and you'll find out. First though, some background. Michael Reeves directed 3 films in his short career. Revenge of the Blood Beast, a 1966 B-movie potboiler with Barbara Steele and Ian Ogilvy. The Sorcerers, a brilliant and imaginative sci-fi horror thriller in 1967 with Boris Karloff and Ian Ogilvy. And Witchfinder General, an absolute masterpiece historical shocker in 1968 with Vincent Price and, yep, that's right, Ian Ogilvy. Reeves was shaping up to be a major filmmaker of rare vision. He died of a possibly accidental alcohol and barbiturate overdose in 1969. He was 25. Witchfinder General stands as a clear indicator of his maturing talent and skill as a writer-director. One can only imagine what greatness he might have achieved had he lived. Then again, he might have churned out a complete load of old shit. Doubtful, but we'll never know. Witchfinder General is a fictionalised account of a real person, one Matthew Hopkins, played here by Vincent Price, a lawyer who in 1645 sets himself up as a moral crusader against witchcraft and Satanism. Along with his henchman Stern, he travels around East Anglia holding witch trials for financial remuneration. Stern tortures the accused on Hopkins' instructions until they confess. Then they are hanged by the neck or incinerated in public executions. Public turns out to watch, jeer and bake spuds in the ashes, pick up some charred bone souvenirs, and everyone goes home happy. Good clean family fun. Meanwhile, the English Civil War is swinging like a motherfucker. Parliamentarians, Roundheads under Oliver Cromwell on one side, and Royalist Cavaliers in support of King Charles I on the other. Ian Ogilvy is Richard Marshall, a soldier in Cromwell's army. During a skirmish, he blows away a lively Cavalier who's about to kill his captain. Given leave as a reward, he gallops off to see the object of his affection, Sarah, the radiant Hilary Dwyer, who is the niece of the village priest, village being Brandeston in Suffolk. The old priest gives his permission for Marshall and Sarah to marry in the near future. Once his leave is over, Marshall heads out again and runs into Hopkins and Stern on the road and gives them directions to the village. Then away he goes, back to put a stop to the laughing of some more Cavaliers. When Hopkins and Stern arrive in Brandeston, the shit hits the windmill. They start targeting locals, including the old priest. Just as he is about to be executed following the customary torture with bloody big stabby needles, Sarah offers her body to Hopkins in return for sparing her uncle. Hopkins agrees and hops on. When he is called away to a neighbouring village, Stern stays behind and idly passes the time by violently raping Sarah. When Hopkins hears of this, he's hopping mad, but doesn't want to jump Sarah anymore, not now Stern has been filling in for him, so instead finds her uncle guilty of consorting with the devil and has him executed along with some other unlucky peasants. Marshall returns as incensed with rage, pledges his love and devotion to Sarah in a mock marriage ceremony, bit like Hazmat and the Meg, and vows to track down and kill both Hopkins and Stern. He sends Sarah to the village of Lavenham where he believes she will be safe, and so begins his mission of revenge. The film builds to a climax as Hopkins and Stern wind up in Lavenham and Marshall and some of his comrades in arms land there also. Hopkins sets a trap whereby Marshall and Sarah are accused of witchcraft, and he has them taken to the local castle to torture confessions out of them. Hopkins tortures Sarah in front of Marshall, but neither will confess. Marshall breaks free and stamps his boot heel through Stern's face. He repeatedly and frenziedly takes an axe to Hopkins until his soldier comrades arrive and one of them puts some grape shot through the dying Witchfinder's face. The movie ends with Marshall shouting insanely and repeatedly,
"You took him away from me. You took him 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 from me."
Whilst a traumatised Sarah, her mind shattered, weeps and screams uncontrollably. Beautiful lyrical music plays. The end. Now if that isn't enough to recommend it, what is, I wonder? How about this? Vincent Price was not the most subtle actor. He was a prime exponent of hyper-theatricality, eye-rolling pantomime mugging and over-exaggerated hamming. Seldom one to underplay, he fitted the horror genre of the time perfectly, wherein his overwrought larger-than-life performances were often in synchrony with a fantastical subject matter. Sometimes, though, he overdid things to a detrimental degree, ruining suspension of disbelief. Michael Reeves didn't want him in his flick, favouring Donald Pleasance for the lead instead, but American International Pictures, who part bankrolled the project, had Price under contract and insisted. The two didn't get on, and reportedly hated each other. However, through sheer force of will, Reeves made Price tone everything down, rein in his on-screen excesses to project something more laid-back, more low-key, and fundamentally menacing. And it worked, and Price gave the best screen performance of his career, something he later partly acknowledged when he saw the finished film. Witchfinder General is an engaging movie, one that immerses the viewer in its world. It is lovingly crafted, the beautifully shot pastoral splendour of the English countryside integrated with stark sequences of gruelling torture and death. The action borders on the sadistic but never tips over into cynical gratuity. It manages to be both great to look at and emotionally disturbing in the events it portrays. The story isn't complex or hard work to grasp, so in that respect it's an easy view, yet what it has to say about twisted morality, exploitation of the weaknesses in others, and taking advantage of a fragmented political system and accompanying social unrest for personal gratification still has the power to shock. It's a world where if someone somehow offends or upsets you for a word in the right ear or few coins in the right pocket, you can see them subjected to social humiliation, ritual torture, and burned to a crisp on the morrow. Pick your target, fill your boots, but be under no illusions. It could be your turn next. Ian Ogilvy is suitably cast as the dashing but ultimately lethal protagonist. Hilary Dwyer is all fresh-faced, refined rural beauty and grace, and Robert Russell makes a good henchman as the rough-hewn and morally deviant Stern, a violent and repugnant rustic redneck. The score by Paul Ferris is an evocative triumph. It sounds a bit derivative of the old folk standards Greensleeves and Scarborough Fair, but is a smartly enhanced adaptation, lyrical and full of haunting hooks that linger in the memory, a delightful sonic counterpoint to the grim events played out in England's green and not so pleasant land. Yes, the film has its flaws. I'm not going to tell you what they are, they're inconsequential. But even so, it's a striking work that still has something of value to say. I would advise today's Cancel Culture Club members to give it a look. They might pick up on a few pointers on how to witch hunt better, along with a history lesson as to the origin of the roots of their psychology. As for anyone else, if you appreciate good dramatic British cinema that ages like a fine wine and feels like an authentic representation of the times in which it is set, this is an essential view. It's great stuff. That's the film. What now follows is a brief reflection on how it jives with certain events in modern society today. If you don't think that's for you, now is the time to take the opportunity to self-censor, the sensible adult alternative to cancellation woke flakes, and switch me off. You may not want to travel any further down this road, it may be upsetting or challenging for you, and we wouldn't want that now, would we? Plus, you may feel an irresistible urge to try and get this video cancelled, which would be sort of proving a point. Witchfinder General, as it turns out, is a telling little parable that mirrors events taking place in the world today. A textbook exercise in cancel culture. Oh look, that's what it says in the title. How does that work, you wonder? I'll spell it out for you and see if any of it sounds familiar. Hopkins is a self-styled champion of morality, self-appointed defender of innocence against evil, crusader for the faith. Doesn't matter that the evil in question is fabricated or imagined, he's not concerned with the truth, rather his personal version of it. Hopkins is also a hypocrite. He exploits people's fears and vulnerabilities for his own ends, for power, influence and gain, feeding his own personal agenda. And in so doing, he doesn't suffer much those who get in his way. They are disposable obstacles, and he will obligingly have them disposed of. The common people, the great unwashed, support his activities through their superstitious quasi-religious beliefs and subservience to an imaginary power, Hopkins' fraudulent status, afraid that if they don't bend the knee, they're going to be next on the list. They are mindful that they need to join the mob and toe the line, because if they deviate, if they express a different opinion or counter-argument, say or do what could be interpreted as the wrong thing to say or do, they're in danger of persecution, torture, and public hanging or burning. Allegorically, the process of identifying a witch is a genuine comparison with the principles underpinning modern cancel culture. Identify or accuse a victim for some pissant infraction, talking to a cat or calling the village idiot stupid and thus hurting their feelings. Tie them up, throw them in deep water, and if they drown, they were in fact innocent, which is good. If they float, that's clear evidence of guilt, and then they get hanged or cremated alive. So, fucked either way. Nowadays, once you are thought of as an enemy by the wider woke club, the lefty libtard snowflake cabal, there is never going to be any forgiveness or redemption for you. You're an enemy forever, because they always have right on their side, right? Doesn't it warm the heart and soul to see the old ways of puritanical dogma and persecution so enthusiastically preserved in the digital age? Human nature, don't change much, does it? Nouveau superstition and conscious bias is such that we are always on the lookout for a devil or bogeyman to point the finger at, lay blame upon for whatever ills befall us or our society, or whatever offends us in some way. Why, we can even be offended on behalf of someone we don't know when we can't know if they themselves would have been offended. And we still morbidly adore a public execution, don't we? Of course, we don't physically torture people to get them to confess and make apologies anymore. Not unless we work at Guantanamo or the post office. We use terrestrial media and social media as the tools of that particular trade. And if and when they do buckle under duress, admitting they were in the wrong, whether they actually were or not, hardly a consideration, we don't gather in a public place to watch their execution. We sit in front of the TV or go online for the experience. Being more civilized now, we don't really kill them, good grief no, although a few will probably take their own lives or fall on their sword, so to speak, collateral damage in the scheme of things, yeah? Instead, the sentence is financial and social ruination, a pariah status bestowed, consigned to social leperhood, persona non grata. This suffices in place of physical death. A virtual demise where you get to live a life, but one that's effectively wrecked. Hey, that's progress for you. Matthew Hopkins was an exploiter of human fear, of impaired reasoning, of religion, culture, superstition, of an ignorant society. He takes advantage of a rift in social order during a bloody civil war when brother turned on brother, neighbour on neighbour, and minor grudges escalated with ease. He is the true evil and deep down he recognises it, but in order to live with it, he has to tell himself the story, the one which rationalises and validates his behaviour, squares him with the universe. And in that story, he is always right and righteous, always doing the right thing in the eyes of society, the law, and God Almighty. He shares a common modus operandi with all despots and destroyers, all human monsters since time began, that intractable self-delusion. And that is how he gets to live, breathe, move amongst others, and function with impunity. And the fearful dumb masses, as always, enable him to do so through their complicity. He comes unstuck in the end, as they all do, because of vanity, fatal narcissism, a false sense of omnipotence. No matter how clever, how protected, how fortuitous he may be, he fails to comprehend the likely outcome resulting from two simple factors. The law of averages, which means his luck will inevitably run out, and fucking with the wrong person or people. Both of which, for those who don't know, will do you in every time. You know, I have to confess to not being the greatest fan of Piers Morgan. He has minimal subtlety, scant nuance, he shouts people down, he talks over them, he bullies. He's a bulldozer of an interviewer who asks what are perhaps the right questions, but often in the wrong way. But that's his style, confrontational and direct, loud and bombastic. But I do believe he is a soul whose intentions are good. He has compassion for the underdog and the common people, and passion for exposing the injustices visited upon them. And often, wouldn't you know it, he's right. And I do get his frustration over the recent Oprah interview with Hazmat and the Meg, his personal issues aside. It's like when you see right through something. When you discern things that don't add up, you notice the anomalies, the contradictions, the things that should have been probed further for some context and clarity by the interviewer but weren't. You divine a put-up job. You pick up on an obvious lack of basic research into the subject matter. You see outright falsehoods, manipulation of the truth, lies by any other descriptor. And you end up shouting at the screen because everyone else seems to be taking it all on face value as gospel truth, with no challenge, no question or analysis or even acknowledgement of the most glaringly inconsistent or unlikely aspects. When did people become such unthinking celeb-struck sheep? When did they lose the ability to look beyond the surface of what is seen and heard? Lack the most basic critical faculty? Think about the facts. You see, there is no your truth, their truth, my truth. There is only the truth. Sure, we all believe different things in different ways. That's known as interpretation, kids. But our individual interpretations won't change facts, just help us to maybe understand them. Try swearing in court, my truth, my whole truth, and nothing but my truth. That's going to be a short fucking trial. We might not know what the truth is, it might not be clear to us, but one thing we do know is that the truth is the truth. Anything else is guesswork, conjecture, and sometimes fantasy, but it ain't necessarily true. Apple falls from a tree, fractures my skull. I may believe that it was grabbed by a passing dark angel who then deliberately and with malice aforethought threw it with force at my cranium. This would be a faulty interpretation of the truth. The truth, based on proven scientific fact, is that the apple had ripened to a point where its stalk could no longer support its weight. It detached from the branch and gravity caused it to fall with accelerating speed of 9.8 meters, 32 feet per second onto my skull, resulting in me going to the local A&E for a CT scan and treatment for a head injury and some minor brain damage. Could have been worse. Could have been sat under a coconut tree or some scaffolding. Then I'd be dead. Maybe. People of some power and influence, like Hillary Clinton, for example, weigh in with their opinion because they see political purchase. It's accepted because it's what some people want to hear, and she's entitled to her opinion, whatever her motives. But why is she credible all of a sudden? Think for a moment. Hillary is a self-styled warrior queen for women's rights, one of her tickets to ride. The same Hillary Clinton, who didn't seem to care much for the human rights of one Monica Lewinsky when Slick Willie, as he was allegedly and no doubt affectionately known in his home state, was trashing her character all over DC and outright lying about his relationship with her. He lied knowingly and repeatedly, which Hillary of course knew nothing about. Her truth. Yeah, right. And people find her plausible now. Really? Strong woman that Hillary, still married to Slick Willie despite everything. Doesn't exactly scream staunch, steadfast feminist icon and champion of the chick, does it, sisters? But if she tells you what you want to hear, she must be on the level, right? Try thinking about it, just a little. You might even get one of those light bulb moments, they're cool. In my opinion, which I am entitled to, so I'm told, Mr. Morgan is entitled to his opinion, and I'm entitled to choose to listen to it or not, to accept it or not, to agree with it or not. What I wouldn't seek to do is censor him, to shut him up, to drive him out of his job, to cancel him. Unless he breaks the law, resorts to slander or libel, then the democratic principles, the foundation stones of any civilized society, should allow him to express his opinions freely and be free from disproportionately adverse outcomes. If you don't agree with his opinion, then you can turn him off or dismiss him. Or how about discuss it some, debate, offer a counter-argument, engage in some constructive process, something that might provide some positive outcome, something that illuminates, educates, advances understanding. Or you could simply whinge to Ofcom like a cowardly brain-dead pussy, which, granted, is your right and privilege, and be yet another Witchfinder groupie in another triggered witch trial. Oh look, here's a song called Witch Trials. What a remarkable coincidence.
But I've spoken my mind. Was I such a fool? Trial with no jury, hangman's noose and a ducking stool. Might have said too much, but I'm not a liar. Innocent or not, torches, oil and a funeral fire. Coming for you with twisted smiles. On a road you walk for miles. What did you do to drive them wild? Triggered angst and cranked their dials. Are you ready? 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 Are you ready for the witch trials? 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 earth would have thought. Sacrifice their gold, sentence preordained. If I end up drowning or I float, yeah, I should have guessed, bringing me to boat. Lack of evidence, little black cat talk is all it took. Coming for you with twisted smiles, on a road you walk for miles. What did you do to drive them wild? Triggered angst and cranked their dials. Are you ready? 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 Are you ready for the witch trials? 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 Oh, there's a corpse in a cage, deterrent hanging by the city gates. Oh, there's a newspaper page, come complete with a time and date. Trial by fire in a retro state. A trial by fire in a retro state. Trial by fire. Coming for you with twisted smiles, on a road you walk for miles. What did you do to drive them wild? Triggered angst and cranked their dials. Are you ready? 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 Are you ready for the witch trials? Are you ready for the witch? Are you ready for the witch trial? Are you ready for the witch trial? Are you ready for the witch trial? Are you ready for the witch